Hello my friends, John LaRuffa here with another rules speed through, and today we're going to take a look at a really cool game called Maracaibo. Alright, now this game is actually not very difficult to play. It has a great solo mode, which is what I'm going to be going through today, and a legacy story campaign, which is also a lot of fun. But I found that some of the rules were just a little bit confusing only because there was just so much variety in what you could do. So I'm going to try to speed through the rules, get you back to the table. You've already read the rules, you've already maybe played a couple games, but you've kind of forgotten. That's what this video is about. Help you get back to it and playing with the solo, Gene as it is, the solo bot in this game. All right, so let's get to the table and get rolling. Okay, because this video, or this game has such a sprawling amount of table space, I'm going to do this one by hand here instead of using the tripod, so hopefully that'll work out okay. We're going to go ahead and give a quick overview of what you see. The game board is over here, of course. On that game board, basically things are going to be, you're going to be kind of circling around this area throughout the game, okay? And you're going to take turns back and forth with Gene, the solo bot. You're going to have your own setup over here, and this setup, you'll notice you have these little brown discs, which you'll be putting out throughout the game. You've got your strength track when you are fighting for one of the 3 different countries of the game, England, Spain, or France, and then you'll have your hand of cards, some money, some cards you have that are in your reserve. They're basically, they don't count against your hand size, but you can't get them out of there unless you actually play them. And you also cannot use them for their goods or their items. They have to be played through the play card action. And then you've got Gene over here. Gene's got this whole row of little discs there that she's going to be putting out throughout the game, and a starting deck of solo cards for her. And you're going to set those up depending on the specific difficulty you choose, like usual. Nice handy player aids, a couple of guys over here, and then up at the top you'll have, and this is kind of mid to late game. I just showed it kind of open like this so that you could see a lot of things going on, trying to jog your memory, so it'll help the explanation go a little bit easier. We've got the tiles for fighting against different countries, the quest tiles, the story quest tiles, whatever the specific story quest is, the tracks for the different nations and their specific influence. And you can also see they've got influence on the board with their cubes out there, and they have some board presence. And then finally, your market of cards, a discard pile, and a couple other components that just, leftovers, things that are come out with the legacy of the game that you keep close hand. So the last thing also on the board is this exploration track here at the bottom, and I'll show you how to get through that in a little bit. So that's the overview of the game, or the overview of the board set. Now, the turn structure is pretty straightforward in this game. I think the real thing that's difficult is there's just a lot of steps sometimes, and it's hard to remember exactly what's going on. But every time on your turn, you're going to move your ship 1 to 7 spaces, okay? And then depending on where you decide to land, you're going to have some different options. If you go to a city, you can deliver one of the goods that are there to take an action at the city, and I'll tell you how to do that. Or if you go to a village, depending on how far you traveled, you'll be able to take 1, 2, 3 or 3 village actions. Or at a village, you can fulfill a quest. Or at a village, you can use your assistant. You can't do one of these actions and then fulfill a quest, or do one of these actions and use the assistant. It's this, or this, or this. And I found that just a little bit confusing for whatever reason. Anytime during the game, though, you can fulfill any of your career starter projects, which are over here. So if you have these conditions, if you've met these conditions, you can remove this guy, put him into your spot right there, and then get the rewards depending on what you did. If you have, for instance, 3 of the combat tiles, you can do that and collect $2. If you wait till you have 4, you get 2 points and $2. So that's sometimes a good thing to wait to get more. So after you're done with your turn, then you are going to redraw to your hand size, and if you want, you can draw from the deck itself for free, or pay 1 coin per card if you want to draw them from the display. And your hand size is usually going to be 4, unless you decide to upgrade it. So let's talk about different actions. The simplest one, again, is moving to a city. So if I was to move my marker to a city, I would be able to deliver one of these specific goods here to take whatever the action is. In this case, the action is gain 1 of your assistants plus take a village action. So it's a little bit different, but there's other ones here. For instance, if I deliver corn, I would move up on my combat track, and I would actually discard one of these discs right here. Now, the city actions, in order to do them, again, you have to have a card in your hand that matches that symbol. So for instance, right here, I happen to have one that has that particular symbol, so I could discard this, and then I would go ahead and choose any disc that I want on my board over here and put that on the spot. So for instance, if I decided to choose this disc right here, I could go ahead and I could put it on the spot right there. And that would allow me then to take 1 person from the general supply, add that assistant to my personal supply here, and take 1 specific village action. And again, the village actions would be either to play a card from your hand paying the cost, get a coin, or discard your entire hand and get 2 coins. And so that was that specific city action. Now, as I said before, other city actions are going to vary, but they all are going to have you spending one of your cards that has this symbol here and putting out a brown disc like I showed, and then doing something. The only exception to that I have seen so far are these city actions over here in this area, and they don't have you spending anything. You either take this action or that action. So let's talk about 2 other actions that are important. The first one, which is common, is the explore action. Explore action is really simple. You basically have an opportunity to move on the explore track, and you move this amount of spaces, plus any additional explore bonuses that you might have from cards that you've already played. So if you had a card, for instance, that had an explore action on it, like this one, you would be able to take an additional explore action every time, not explore action, an additional move every time you move. And so you can move up to that number, 2 or more, depending on whether you have the bonuses, stop on any of these tiles, or any of these spaces, and get the bonus. You don't get anything for passing anything. You basically just get where you stop. There are also places where you can get a quest. If you have the required things to fulfill the quest, you could land on the quest space and fulfill that quest. So for instance, this particular one, you need 2 maps. If you go ahead and have 2 maps, you'll do whatever it says on the bottom for the bonuses. You'll take the quest. You'll put the quest over here. It'll help you score points at the end of the game, possibly, but most importantly, it'll defend against Gene scoring a lot of quests and you getting in real trouble, being very far behind in the quest amount. So we'll talk about that in the end scoring. But that is basically how you move along this track. At any point, if you cross over these 3 different barriers, you do what it says. So these barriers here, the first person to cross over gets 4. Anyone after that gets 2. Same thing with this. This one in particular is a little different in the fact that you get to move up 3 spots on this influence track. You pick whatever spots you want, and you move up on those spots. In particular, you just make sure, again, there's a lot of little subtle things to this game. Be careful that you understand what this particular icon really means. Do you have to move up on 1 spot, or do you have to move up on multiple spots? In this particular case, you will just gain 1 influence, actually up to 3 influence, in any nation that you choose. So you could choose any one and then go ahead and gain them. But again, there's a lot of little subtleties, and you're just going to have to look at the rules with all these different examples to figure out what specifically to do. And so that's how the exploration action works. You can never go backwards on the track. You always go forward. And eventually, if you really, really go far through here, you'll get to these end areas here that will score you lots of points and also let you take one specific village action once you get there. And so that's the explore. The other action that is found in cities is combat. So combat is just a little bit more tricky in regards to how to execute it. And the best thing to do is to follow this table one at a time. So it first says reveal one of these tiles. You're going to go ahead and you're going to reveal it, and you're going to look and decide, okay, which nation am I going to fight for? In this case, this one says the nation that is in the 3rd place or the lowest on the influence. They're all tied here, but let's just say we had a situation like this where we had this. If a player decided to fight for France over there, they would get a +3 to their total number of fighting actions or fighting points that they have, or combat points they have. If you decided to fight for Spain, you would actually get one of your specific assistants out of the general pile to use for the rest of the game until you spend it. And if you fight for down here for England, you would just get the 4 combat points. So you look at the nation, you choose what you're going to do, then you can determine your total. Okay, your total is whatever you decided here, plus any modifiers, plus however much you want to contribute here, plus you can discard one of these guys to get additional points, okay? And so that will determine your total. Then based on your total, you can take these actions, okay? So you could spend 2 or 5 to move up 1 or 2 on the specific influence tracks over here. And let's say I spent 2, I would go ahead and I would move up on this track if I was fighting for England. Again, you can't bounce back and forth. You have to choose one nation to fight for. If I wanted to do it twice, then I would have to spend 5. Additionally, I could spend 4 to take one of these cubes from England and put it someplace on the board. When I put it on the board, I have to look for a spot that has an open flag. So these village spots have open flags. I would put them in one of these areas right here and get the 2 points or whatever the reward is. Okay, the other thing that you could do, though, you could decide to spend 6. And if you spend 6, you would push someone off the board. Let's say I spent 6. I would push that person off the board and go to that spot. And sometimes that's important because that could help you change the amount of presence that is currently on the board for the end game scoring, which we'll talk about at the end. Finally, after you do that move, you will get to take the bonus, like I said, and you'll go up on that specific nation 1 more spot over there. And then if you have any other things that you can do through the cards, your ship upgrades, then you would go ahead and do those. For instance, the ship upgrade here would change your actions ever so slightly as far as what to do. If you had this particular situation, you would gain access to something a little bit different. But there's a lot of different things that you could do depending on what the combat is. Finally, when you're done, you put the combat right there, and that just shows that you have those tokens. You've done that combat, and then you finish your turn. Now let's briefly go through if I was to move to a village. So let's say I decided to move to this village right here, San Juan. I have 2 choices. I could go 1, 2, 3, 4 to get there, all right, or I could go 1, 2, 3 to get there. Now I'm going to want to go the longer way, because the more actions you take, the more steps you move, the more actions you'll get when you get to the village. Okay, so it encourages you, if you want to get bigger turns, to move further along. And this game has a little bit of a race to it, because the first person to get to the end spots here is usually going to find themselves rewarded for getting there first and getting extra points. Okay, so if I was to do that, then I have a choice. In this case, because there was no one in there as far as an assistant and no quest, I basically just get to do this. I can either play cards from my hand, and when I do that, I would do that for the cost. I could take $1, or I could discard my entire hand and take $2. So how do I play a card from my hand? Well, let's take a look. In the upper left-hand corner, you see clearly here the cost to play this mercenary is 7. You also see a spot that says you have to take one of your assistants and put it on space number 6. So if I wanted to play this card, I would spend 7, okay, on my coins. I would put the card in my player area. I would then gain anything it shows on the bottom here, okay? So I would gain this particular token right here, plus I would immediately be able to do whatever's in the blue. It says get 2 combat, then move 1 to 3 steps and perform another main action. So those blue ones are kind of immediate things that happen right away. And then again, I have to put one of these guys on spot number 6. So spot 6 is over here, just happens to be where I am. And from now on, when I land in that spot, I have the option to do this particular action. I should have made that clear. You don't do this right away. This blue means that this corresponds to an assistant action later on. So in other times in the game, when I go past that spot, or I get pardon me, I land on that spot, I can use that to take this particular assistant action and do exactly what it says over here. Okay, so that would open up another option for me in that particular spot. And again, playing this card was one of my 2 actions that I could take. So my second action, maybe I just take the coin, or maybe I decide to discard the hands the card of hands I have, and I get 2 coins. But your total number of moves is determined by how far you traveled on your turn. Now, like I said, the other type of village action you could take is to fulfill a quest. So there's going to be quests that come out throughout this game, depending on what the card says over here. So if there was a quest, for instance, in this spot right here, and I decided to land on that spot, I could do what it says, pay basically the top to get the bottom. So in this case, I would pay 1 combat point, and then I would get 2 coins for each compass icon that I have. Plus, I would go ahead and I would move out 2 of these discs and just put them out of the game, further upgrading my ship. After I do that, I take this and I put it, again, in this area right here, which could eventually help me score points, and is necessary for me to compete favorably against Gene. And that would be it. So no matter how far I move on a quest situation, I would just go ahead and fulfill the quest and be done with it. Okay, the last thing is using that assistant action, like I said. So for instance, I have an assistant over here at 19. If I was to travel there on my turn, I could do whatever it says. In this case, it says in 19, you can do this, okay? So that would just give me a specific action to do. If I move past him, anytime you move past an assistant on the board, you automatically get 2 points, okay? So that's helpful too. Laying down these assistants and moving past them can be a lucrative way to score points in this game. And that is all the different main actions that you can take with the villages. Again, there's a lot of little variances and things that happen in the game. You have to look those up as they come up to know what to do. Now let's take a quick moment to go over a few different things that the cards can do for you. If you see anything in this green area, that means that you get it right away when you play the card, okay? So for instance, if I play this card right away, I would go ahead and I would actually move the income track up a specific amount of coins there, and I would move the victory point income track, so to speak, the victory point track up if I had this little house icon. So I would have had to get the house icon somehow throughout the game by usually building or playing a card that gives it to me. If I had that, I would immediately then move up 4 on my influence track for victory points. If I get it later in the game and I've already played the card, I still will get to immediately adjust for 4 if I've already played the card. So there's a variety of different things that these can do. But again, the green ones you take right away and you make movements on these 2 tracks up here. Okay, and that's what those do. We've already talked about how these work. That's for an assistant. This gives you a permanent ability. In this case, it permanently says that you have this particular thing for useful contract fulfillment. If you ever need one, you can always just use that as if you have a supply of one of those without having to spend the card. And so that's pretty helpful. And then there's a variety of other kinds of things in these spots that luckily the cards do a pretty good job telling you what specifically you could do. And then sometimes there are some things that actually give you different actions. So this is actually something that says your last action in a village, you can do this. So that's really cool. I love that about the game. There's a lot of variety in what you can do depending on the cards that you play. Okay, let's talk about what Jean does in her turn. So she's always going to flip over a card, and then depending on what the number says on top, she's going to move her ship that amount of spaces. And if there's a choice to make of which direction, she's either going to swoop up and around or down and around depending on which side this arrow kind of curves. She skips every spot except for city spots and spots that have quests. So I just showed a 2 there. She's going to count this spot as 1, all right? And then she's going to, at this fork, swing over and go there for 2 because these are city spots. When she does that, if there is ever a quest on that spot, she's going to immediately take the quest, doesn't have to pay anything, just puts it there or turns over. If there's not, and it's a city, she is going to take one of her discs and put it on the city spot. So for instance, this would come off, and she would go ahead and put this right on the city spot right there. Okay, she does not ever take these actions. Instead, she will go ahead and do whatever the card says. If the spot does not have a place for her to take off and place a disc, if it's full, or if it's a spot like this, for instance, she is going to take the first card in the supply, or in the display, pardon me, and it's going to be card number 1, 2, 3, or 4. She's going to take that, she's going to flip it down, she's going to put it over here next to her board, and that will help her score at the end of the scoring right here. Okay, so that is what she's going to do. And there's a variety of different things that are going to happen. This is probably the most complicated one. This is how she's going to take her fighting action when she decides to fight for a specific country. The way to do this is you have to look at what gives her the maximum amount of points, and you have to look at where she is on the track and subtract your specific amount of influence to determine what her total combat action power is. Then she's going to choose which one to attack with, and then she's going to carry out the specific action of moving one of those cubes to a spot on the minimum number, and then putting it over on that location just like you would. So she would put it on one of these locations over here. And then finally move up 2 on the influence track of that particular country that she fought for. Follow the rules on that one. That's the most confusing of them all, but that's what happens. This one is just a variation. So there's solo A, B, and C. The B and C cards are usually stronger. This one, again, you're always just going to be following the specifics of what to do. And so it makes the solo very easy to accomplish. There's not a lot of trickery in there, which is great. This one says she moves on the exploration track, so she's going to move up 2 spaces. If there is a spot to get the quest, she's never going to skip it. She's going to go and take the quest. She does not ever get a bonus for crossing any of these particular things, but at the end of the game, if she's crossed more than you did, then you are going to have to give her extra points. And so her turn is pretty simple. If you ever run out of cards, you will shuffle the cards back again and keep going. You don't add cards to her deck throughout the game. And it's really easy to kind of accomplish. But just remember, she never takes any of the actions on the board. She only does what is on the card itself. And so that's also pretty helpful. And she will take she will keep the tiles she takes. So if she takes quests, she'll keep those. If she takes combat actions, she'll keep those, because that is how, depending on what you have at the end of the game, it depends the difference between her and you on the scoring, which is, put in this chart. Okay, so finally, let's clarify the end of the round, so to speak. When someone moves to this spot, you're never allowed to move past it. You have to stop here. You take your choice of city action. If it's Jean who does it, she will use the card just like she moved to a city, but she will be forced to stop right there. On the next turn, that person must move over to this spot if it's rounds 1, 2, or 3, or to the top, depending on if it's round 4. And sometimes the top has different things. So for instance, this tile comes out later in the game and changes what's on the board. Okay, when you do this, you immediately will gain 3 points for being there. If you're Jean, you don't gain 3 points. Again, you take the action that's on the card. So I found that kind of confusing, but she does not take these actions. Then you go through the steps of the interim scoring. So Jean doesn't go through any of these steps except for this. All she does is she will score 1 point for every card that she has in her possession. Again, you got the cards from different ways throughout the game, plus however many of these that you have moved discs away. So if the situation was like this, she would go ahead and score 8 points for having that. Then you just track it like anything else. That is done. That's all she does. That's all she scores for. Then you have to go through these situations here. First, you decide, am I going to build a card for my hand, or am I going to get 2 points? After I build a card, I refill my hand. Otherwise, I just get 2 points. Then I get income depending on the 2 income tracks. Money over here, victory points over there. All right. Then I will take away any of these brown discs that are on the board so that they clear them up, and these areas are now open to be used in future rounds. Okay. Then I'm going to discard all of the cards in this area, like so, and deal out fresh ones. I'm not going to deal them right now, but you get the point. Then I'm going to reveal the next one of these end game bonus cards. These cards you can actually play on throughout the game. The first person to play on these cards will be gain 2 points, plus you'll get this. And you're the only one who's going to be doing this in the solo, so you'd always get the 2 points. And then this is a specific thing at the end of the game that you have to do. And these are pretty pricey. They also usually require you to spend a guy as well and put them someplace. And so they're pretty pricey, but they're also very, very good. In this case, you don't put the guy anywhere but back into the supply. So again, you could do that anytime in the game, but here you're just revealing it. Then you're going to check and see if you've accomplished the story quest. If you have, you read the back of the card, do whatever it says, maybe draw a new card. If you have not, you just skip it. And then everybody, no matter where they are, is going to go back to Havana. So it basically restarts everybody, and then the next person will take their turn, starting from here. And that is how you do the interim scoring. Now in the 4th round, final scoring is a little bit trickier just because you have to evaluate what's going on up here. So the first thing you're going to do, again, is you're going to have the chance, do I want to build one of these particular cards, either in my hand or maybe put it up there or whatever, or do I take 2 points? Then I get my income, except here, you're not going to get money, you're going to get a total number of points, depending on where you've crossed there, and then points from here. Okay, so in this case, I didn't get any of those, so I wouldn't get any points at all from that track, but I would get 2 points from this particular track. Then I'm going to go ahead and score points depending on what of these conditions that I've met. And of course, this one would be revealed at that time, and I'll get those points at that point. Then I'm going to see who is the person in each of these tracks that has the maximum amount of influence on each of them, and that person gets 3 points. In the case of the tie, both get 3 points. So here, Jean would get 3 points, I would get nothing. We would both get 3 points here, and then we would both get 3 points here. Then we have to determine how many points we get with regards to each of the specific tracks, and that is where the multipliers come in, plus the total point value. So the first thing you do is you have to see who has the most cubes, not off here, but on the board. So you have to count up all the different cubes that are on the board, see who's got the most. That person, that nation will get 2, plus any completely revealed spot. So this would, let's say it was white, it would be 2, 3, 4, 5, times your total that you've passed or met over here to get those points. So that would be 5 for white, and we've both gotten over here to the 1, just past it, so we both get 5 points. In the case of the second most, that person gets 1, again, plus this, times the multiplier. And then the last doesn't get anything but whatever they've revealed, times the multiplier. So that's how that works. Finally, then you will go ahead and resolve, if you've completed the quest, or I'm sorry, not the quest, the story card, resolve that, and that will be the end. The person with the most points at the end of that is the winner. Now, there are specific things that also have to happen with Jean, which is what I'm going to go over. When you score for Jean, she's going to score the same points that you had in the beginning of the game, or at this end scoring, with regards to whatever she did throughout the game. Okay, she doesn't score any additional points here. All she does is scores for this, just like you did in the interim scoring. So she would score again 8 plus the number of cards. Then she will score 5 points for each quest she has. Okay, so in this case, let's say she had this situation, that'd be 5, 10, 15, 20. That'd be 20 points for the quests. Okay, then what she has to do is you have to take a look at how many more quests did she complete than you did. If she completed more, but just 1 more, it's 10. 2 or more, it's 20, and 3 or more quests than you, it's 30. So that's really punitive. She'll also score bonus points if she's revealed more of these little tan areas, basically more upgrades than you did. So you have to look and see, well, how many did I reveal? Maybe I've got a situation where I've revealed these 2. Well, that's very unlikely. It would just be 2, but let's say it is. She has 3. She's going to get a 10-point bonus for having 3. And then if she went further on you than you on the track, she's going to get a bonus depending on how many spaces she went further. So if she went 7, if she's further, she gets 10. She went 7 further, she gets 20. 10 further than you, she gets 30. So those really add up and are very, specific as far as a good way to lose the game with respect to her. If you don't keep up with her on quests or keep up with her on other things, then she becomes really difficult and challenging there, and will get a lot of bonus points at the very end. And then finally, she's also going to look and see if she scored more. I'm tripping over my words here. She's not going to look and score if she's more. She's going to still score this just like you would, depending on where her spot is in the track, just like you did in the first place. So you kind of score that all together. And then, depending on who has the most points, that's the winner. Once you're done playing, you will take any legacy items and any items that are on the board that are legacy related and put them into this little blue bag, saving them for next time. So one of the things I think that is cool is you don't have to complete that story. Whatever you didn't complete, you just put in the bag, and that's going to be available for your next situation. So a game's always played in 4 rounds, and if you don't get everything done in 4 rounds, you just kind of pick up where you left off. So that's really interesting. All right, and that is how you play Maracaibo with the solo opponent. Hopefully this helped you get back to the table. Again, there's so many little iconography things to go over. It's impossible to do those. You're just going to have to take a look at the rule book or find a good player aid or something that details all of those. But the actual gameplay is not so bad at all. You spend most of the time focusing on your strategy, which is outstanding. The Gene bot is really easy to run, very challenging. If you're not keeping track of what she's doing, she can beat you pretty bad if she gets farther ahead of you in quests or in the exploration or in upgrades, and it becomes really difficult. So she provides a really nice challenge. I really enjoy this game. I hope you do too. And again, John LaRuffa here for Rule Speed Through. If you like this video, please subscribe. I really would appreciate it. It helps me out a lot, and it's definitely something that I want to keep doing. So thank you very much, and I'll see you around.